Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are here for a Giants bye week, a nice, easy, relaxing December week. And we've got plenty to talk about in the world of the Giants, in the world of football. How you doing, Cranky Fan?
And in the world of hockey, we have a big Just Giants Cup game Thursday night. Devils Lightning at Prudential Center. If anybody wants to join me, Grump, and Bobby Skinner, we'll be there.
We're 1-1 in that series, right? Of attended games.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
And we are 1-1 this year playing against each other. So
There you go. So this is a big tiebreaker for that. I'm excited. It's a shame again Jack Hughes won't play. So, we'll
it's a
see.
shame that it's a shame that Vasilevsky's not going to play. That's a big problem.
Okay, all right. So then, no built-in excuses. I wasn't trying to make an excuse. It's just annoying that the best player is just never playing for the Devils. But that's okay. I'm excited to go to that. That's going to be a great time. It's always a great time. Watching hockey live is so much fun. And
Good seats are available. So if you want to go, let us know.
Yeah. Big day in the world of big week in the world of football. I guess starting with the biggest thing is probably the college football selection process for the playoffs.
Yes.
Lots of turmoil in there. Very interesting. You're always the guy I go to for college takes because I know that I live outside the world of the minutia of college football because I find a lot of it very silly. I just want to watch really, really good games. I don't really have a stake in who wins or who loses. I'm not really rooting. I just want to see some good football. And college football is always good for that. You're always good for a good game. I remember I was watching at the beginning of the year, the Dublin game was Iowa State and Kansas State. And I couldn't give less of a shit about either of those schools, but was locked in for like a slop fest of a game. It was so much fun to watch.
College football is so much more important than every other sport because it's the only sport where it's not championship or bust. It's a lot like English soccer, where you want to win the Premier League, but there's also Champions League. There's also FA Cup. There's also, the League Cup. There's all these different things going on, and college football rivalries. There's nothing, and there's no other sport or league in this country that matches. I was at the Florida State game week and a half ago, and we're talking about a team that has 3 wins against a team trying to get bowl eligible, and that place was as electric as any Giant game I've been to in the Meadowlands in the last 10, 15 years. So that's what makes college football special. Now we're going to talk about the playoff, which does everything it can to ruin the specialness of college football. We're going to start this conversation, but with a caveat that I am all for the college playoff. I'm a traditionalist in college football, but nothing made me madder than a computer or a committee saying these 2 teams should play for the national title. So I've been for the playoff from the beginning. I've been even for it for expansion of it. But how we're getting to this is what we're going to talk about now, and what's so frustrating from someone like me in the minutia and someone like Grump who's looking at a little bit more of the outside.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to this, right? I am 100% for the playoff. I couldn't agree more that there is way too many teams that wind up undefeated at the end of the year or with 1 loss, and there's too much to consider for just a group of people to decide that the 2 best teams, who they are and who should play for that, and that at the end of the day should all be settled on the field. You should never be in a situation where a team with no losses gets completely ignored out of the conversation, and you wind up with this big question of like, well, could they have beaten them? I don't know. They never lost. How can you count out somebody like that? And I agree with that. And I think that any fan of any team that was ever in competition for that and got knocked out. I mean, I think like 1 year Miami got knocked into 3 when they had no losses back in the early 2000s. or maybe the 80s they got knocked out of it where they couldn't even get considered. I mean, it's nonsense. So putting it on all in the field makes the most sense. But now we've entered into a world of way overthinking and ruining football. So I mean, I think that college football is a wonderful subsect of the sport and of American sports where it just exists in its own kind of world where you have your conferences and they've already screwed this up. We did a very special episode over the summer when they completely dissolved the conferences and smashed them all together for TV contract reasons and how that damaged the sport. We should not and we will not rehash any of that stuff. But if you're interested in that, I'd recommend checking out that episode because Cranky was, I gave him basically the floor to go through all of that, and it's an hour or so long where he goes through the history of it all and why it was bad, and it's not just the fact that you have Oregon on the West Coast in the same conference as Rutgers on the East Coast playing for games. It goes beyond all of that. But now, with the selection process, and you had said this in that episode, now that they're up to 12 teams, and I think that 12 is a good number. I think maybe you could expand to 16 to make it like an even bracket if you wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary. I think 12 teams is plenty to decide who can become the best team in the country. And I think that, and this is what you had said then, is I have no sympathy for anyone that didn't get put into the top 12 because once you're in conversation around the bottom there, around 11, 10, 11, 12, you've done enough damage to yourself that you should not even be considered anymore. And it's almost like a grace to let you in.
Especially teams like Miami and Notre Dame who don't play the schedule that an Alabama or, you know, a Big Ten team would play. They skate along, and when you lose two games, that's not. I think a lot of the problem is that people that don't lock into college football every week or something, they just look at record.
Yes.
Not every 9-2 or 9-3 team is the same. Not every 10-2 team is the same. Not even every 12-0 team is the same. You know, just and even within each conference, things are, not really the same. I mean, Ole Miss, for example, and this is not going to be an I hate Lane Kiffin argument. This is a fact. Lane Kiffin, I mean, Ole Miss did not play Texas A&M, did not play Alabama. They played Georgia, they lost. So, these conferences are so big now. The schedules, the way they determine it, it's kind of like we're going to rotate everybody in, and you may get lucky one year. You may have a draw where you're not playing the four best teams in the conference that year.
Then you
And
got to
now that
win.
they've got right, and now that they've gotten rid of the divisions in a conference, you could skate along and get to the conference championship. At least the old way, you had to at least win every, be the best team in your division. You played everyone in your division. Now it's just completely arbitrary, the luck of the draw of who your schedule is that year. So that's a big thing about it.
Yeah, so I mean at the end of the day, I never really cared all that much about the selection into the playoff. It was not a big part of my life. I also think that the week to week ranking changes was something that was so overblown and clearly done for money.
Can I jump in real quick?
Oh,
with that?
absolutely.
Because first of all, I've been saying this since I was in high school, that this is way back. This is back in the AP and the UPI polls, before the coaches poll everything. There should be no polls, none, until October 15th. I think it's an incredible advantage for teams to start off in a preseason poll of 3 or 4 versus unranked preseason. When you have no idea really, you can make an assumption that, oh, this team is going to be really good this year. Last year people thought Florida State was going to be a top 5 team coming into the season, and we're one of the worst teams in college football, the 120 teams. So I always said no rankings at all until you played at least 6, 7 games and you have a sense of everybody's fairly being evaluated. What I can't stand right now, and the second they announce it, is why are we having college football playoff rankings each week when they are 1000% meaningless. They don't mean anything. All they do is they assign a ranking. So on TV next week, number 2 plays number 4. That's all it is. Because even whatever you were in October 15th is meaningless to what it is on December 7th. But is it shown even last week? Teams are moving around who don't even play.
Hmm.
So what difference did last week's poll make when you go into the final poll? There should be one, the poll. That's it, the final poll. The other ones are a waste of time. I get it. It's so ESPN can fill up programming time, yapping away about it. I get it, but meaningless and disservice.
Yeah, I agree, and again, I understand the purpose of it is to hype up games, and it's a tangible way to tell somebody that it's a big game without having to explain yourself to a
It's also
non-observer.
bullshit. It's also bullshit, Grump, because the Big Ten game Saturday night was a 1 versus 2 game.
Yeah,
Did anybody watching look at that as a 1 versus 2 game? If anything, most people looked at it as a who cares? They're both getting in the playoff anyway. You know, obviously Indiana and Ohio State fans care, and Big Ten fans care. They want to know who the champion is, but the 1 versus 2 part of it was completely irrelevant. So why even bother doing it in the first place?
yeah. I mean, I guess that's a good point. I mean, I I think it factors in the scenario in which, and I guess that this won't happen in the Big Ten that often, but maybe it'll happen in the ACC, right? You could have a number one ranked ACC team playing for its ACC championship against a team that's ranked 20th. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the number two team in the ACC, let's just say it's Miami and like Syracuse. Miami could be ranked number one in the country, and Syracuse could be number 20 in the country. And in that way, yes, it's an ACC championship game, but for all non-ACC, non-Syracuse, non-Miami fans, a 1 versus 2 game is still worth watching in a different sense. I see what you're saying, but I do think that there are scenarios in which it can apply. But I think that they're also going to be few and far between. I don't think that scenario is very likely. It's one that might happen once every 15 years.
And I always implore for everybody, don't try to make exceptions prove the rules for these things. Well, what if this happened, or what if this happens? Okay, show me how many times in history that happened. That's not going to prove your point. Uh-oh, Barkley's running loose. We're recording this on a Monday night, and Barkley just got loose for about a 40-yard touchdown. Fuck him.
Yeah, so going into this, the big thing I have, and again, I don't have favorite or not favorite teams. I really don't care. Florida State, Miami, those two words come with a little bit of vomit when Cranky says them. I have no issue. So when I say this, I know a huge fan base is going to get angry, but I don't care.
I could care less.
I don't give a fuck that Notre Dame didn't get in, but I do care that they have petulantly screamed and whined their way out of a bowl game. If we don't get our way, then we won't play in your bowl game. I'm going to just say a couple things. There are people who are defending this, who think that they are sticking it to the man. I promise you, they have done nothing. I do not think that they have stuck it to anybody, other than themselves, maybe. They think that ESPN has their own agenda, and they're the ones who have picked the polls. That is inaccurate. ESPN doesn't pick anything. ESPN has earned the right to report the rankings, and that's what they pay for. And they
paid for the right. They didn't earn the right.
Well, right. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, and they 100% will milk that and make it all the money they can make out of it. They think it's worth money, so they paid for it, and now they are going to try and recoup that. But they don't pick anything. So there's no ESPN agenda to get a team in or keep a team out. There isn't. There just isn't. What happened was Notre Dame lost to Miami at the very beginning of the year. As the season unfolded, that became a deciding factor. And as it turns out, Miami got in because they won that game, and Notre Dame missed out. And that is a shame, and that sucks. But I feel bad for no team that finishes 13th or last. In fact, I feel bad for no team ranked 10 through 25. All of you have done enough to warrant yourselves to be out of the conversation at all. You're outside of number 8. You're not even in the top fucking 8. So, yes, you could fight your way to a championship, but it is such an outside shot that I do not give a shit if you're in or out. Go in there and prove to me that you 9, 10, 11, and 12 that you even belong there. But I'm sorry, I just don't care if you got ranked 13th.
That's how I've always felt. To me, I have again, growing up in an era when there were teams where there were three undefeated teams and one didn't make it because it was a one versus two, or even before, the BCS when it was, the SEC champ was locked into the Sugar Bowl, the Big Eight, then the Big 12 was locked into the Orange Bowl, and and so on and so on and so forth, where you could not may not get a one versus two matchup. So my point being that some teams that were really deserving were not national champions. But if you had one loss back then or two, you're out. You're not a championship team in my book. So I still believe that. So, as much as I hate Florida State and happy I was that they didn't make it in 2 years ago when they were undefeated and Jordan Travis got hurt, I can empathize with them a little bit that they were an undefeated team that didn't get to play in the playoff. But that was the difference between 2 and 3. I'm sorry, 4 and 5 rather, 4 and 5. I am not having that same sympathy for 12 versus 13. I'm sorry. We're talking about teams that, you know, either didn't even make their conference championship game or schools that elect to be in a conference for 22 sports, but not the one that's the real moneymaker. And they chose to go their own way. And they got their NBC contract, which doesn't even pay as much as what each SEC team gets now with their contract with ABC, ESPN. So if they want to, if they want to take the money, fine. That cost them a potential landing spot in the playoff. Um, as for the opting out thing, I look at it a little differently than you. I agree they shouldn't opt out, although there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 schools that have opted out of bowl games this year. Notre Dame is doing it because they're pulling a hissy fit, but it's not unique in this day and age with watered down bowl games and all this different teams not to bother. Some of these schools, well, they got a new coach and they don't want to, you know, whatever reasons. I look at it from a more practical standpoint. When you're bowl eligible, well, let's look at the reverse way. Florida, their season ended when they beat Florida State. Their season's over. They're not playing in a bowl game. That means the team is dispersed. They're gone. People, some entered the transfer portal. Some are graduating in December. They're no longer a team. If you're in a bowl game, you get, I believe it's 8 to 10 more practices with your coach. That is things that who cares who you're playing in the Gasparilla Bowl or the Independence Bowl. I'm looking to next year, and this kid that's been redshirted all year, who's now eligible to play in the bowl game because bowl games don't count towards red shirts and everything. I want to see what he can do. I have this left tackle that I've been thinking about maybe really should be a right tackle. Things like that. You lose all of that if you opt out of a bowl game. No more practices. I think that's really stupid. Especially in a sport where every coach is trying to gain every competitive advantage possible, closing off practice to the media, you know, practicing behind curtains, what you name it. It just seems really silly to not do it for that way. If they feel that they're superior to everybody, they don't have to play in bowl games. That's on them. It does a disservice to their players who are not going to have to play in one last game and all that. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a school that gets to chart their own destiny. They get special exemption for everything. Next year in the new playoff system, if they're in the top 12, they're going to be in the playoff. It's bullshit, but they're Notre Dame, and we have to kind of accept by that. And it's also something we have to accept overall with the college football playoff. Until they went to 12 games, it was a 4-game playoff. The mantra was simple when you were deciding the 4 teams. Who are the 4 best teams? That is not true anymore. We are now a 12-team playoff. It's not the 12 best teams. It is, the 5 highest ranked conference winners. It's, you know, uh, all these different factors. So it's not the best teams in it. It's the ones that fit, these. It's like watching that stupid World Cup selection show on Friday where, okay, the ball came up for Ecuador. Oh, they can't be in this pool because there has to be a European one here. Everything gets so convoluted. It's like, what the hell are we doing? So you have to think now in the modern college football playoff, it's not the best team. So Notre Dame is probably one of the 12 best teams in the country, but that's not the criteria anymore.
But again, you're saying probably. It's not definite. So I'm not crying anymore. Like um
I'm pretty sure they are better than Tulane.
pretty sure. Yeah. I am. I agree. But also I feel no sympathy. There's a number of
None.
different things here. Number
None,
one,
zero. None.
yeah, first of all, nobody thinks as highly of Notre Dame as a Notre Dame fan or alumni. I promise
You
you.
ever been there, Grump?
I've never
It's
been to the stadium. No,
it
I would like
it
to go.
is it is awesome, but it is a shrine about itself.
Oh yeah.
The stadium has zero advertising. And when I mean zero, no banners on the walls, no electronic scoreboards, no commercials during the timeouts. They think they're above advertising. They're like the masters in that way.
Well, I
And the
mean,
people
I'm
there,
not going to complain about that. I think that's
yeah,
perfect
but I'm saying
actually.
like they also, the more important thing in this argument is that everybody walks around there like they think they're in a 1935 prep school in the North, in New England or something. They have this arrogance about them that we're Notre Dame. But at least the people there went there. You had all these subway alums who live in the Northeast and New York who couldn't tell you Notre Dame from Notre Dame, and they had this air of like superiority about them. So there is a stuck upness about them that is a little silly, considering over the last 40 years their relative lack of success compared to other blue bloods like the Bamas of the world, the Ohio States.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to shut up and join a conference, shut up and win games, leave nothing to chance. Like, I don't feel bad. No one's trying to stick it to you. If anything, I would say that the college football playoff stands to gain from Notre Dame being in it than being out of it. So
they're changing the rules next year to make sure they're in it. Same ESPN broadcasting it, same things. There was 0% chance that they conspired to keep them out. If anything, they're trying to do everything they can to keep them in.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, was this a protest against yourself for losing your head-to-head against Miami? One of the few hard games you had. Yeah, I don't care.
A&M too.
Yeah, I said few, not only.
Yeah.
But yeah, join a fucking conference. Grow up. Get over it. Get over yourself. Win games, just like everybody else has to. Whether or not Alabama should be dropped or not, that's another argument.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still, yeah.
So, and I just think that in the spirit of the sport, like, first of all, they're not sticking it to anybody by not playing in a bowl game. The only people that lose are the players that would have played. And yes, I understand the premier players all sit out, but like you were saying, the red shirts of the world, the guys who never get to play, the guys who barely get any time, that's their only chance at film, they all get screwed out of it. They haven't done anything. Nobody gives a shit. Yeah. But nobody cares that you're not playing in a bowl game. It's not going to affect anything. You haven't stuck it to ESPN. You haven't stuck it to anybody. All you've done is stuck it to yourself. So the whole thing is just silly to me, and I don't think it's in the right spirit of the sport to do things like that. I understand that bowls have become more and more meaningless as we've invented the playoff and expanded it, and I get all of that, but it's just not in the spirit to throw a tantrum, and that's why you're not going to do it.
Let's be blunt, Grump. What has happened in college football in the last 10 years? It is in the spirit of college football. Players are allowed to leave with no penalty. Players are now getting paid. Conferences are now a collection of teams. There's no more regionality to it.
I could not agree more.
Games are, ridiculous hours, and short notice, so fans have no way to plan their
Listen,
their
you don't get lost in the woods by being dropped out of a helicopter. You get lost in the woods by making a series of bad turns, and that's exactly where college football is finding itself now. I've seen a series of arguments, and I understand that Twitter is Twitter, but the amount of people agreeing with it is what, and higher profile people, not 15
Agreeing with
year olds.
what?
Hang on, I'll get there. But what I'm saying
Oh,
is not 15-year-olds with like Joe, bunch of numbers, bunch of letters. I mean, like, writers, etc., agreeing with the idea that certain teams should consider opting out of the conference championship because they think it will detriment them in the idea of the playoff. What the fuck are we doing? You're not going to even compete for your own conference anymore? This is lunacy. So
I
we've completely lost the thread on what we're aiming for here.
I can completely guarantee that every single person who did that is not from the South, is not from the Midwest.
I mean,
I
so
can get I can guarantee those
the argument
people,
for it was Alabama should have opted out because they could
then they
only
don't win the SEC.
I,
Or they don't beat Georgia.
I
And
agree.
and because again, a lot of those people who think that are people that either A are from like the Northeast or a place where college football is a sport they watch on Saturday and not a way of life like it is in other places. Um, B, watch ESPN all day and all day from September 1st until now, where all they care and talk about is the playoff. The beauty of what, like I said in the beginning of this, the beauty of college football is it is not just about the national championship. National championships are great. I have three, love them, but there's so much more. I also won 7 SEC titles. I beat Florida State so many times. I 3 Heisman trophies. I do all these different things. Those things are what make college football great. And when you look at it through the lens of college, of playoff or bust, national championship or bust, you are going to talk about things that you think about that are not part of the fabric of college football. Winning your conference, especially the SEC, especially the Big Ten, the old Pac 10, it's gone. Now Pac 12, it's gone. It's huge. It's enormous. You ask anybody from Indiana last night. We have a friend, Cranky wife has a friend who went to the game Saturday, and she was talking on the phone today. Said in the fourth quarter, she pulled a Cranky fan. She threw up. She threw up, not from drinking all day. She was so nervous about how that game was going to go for a conference championship game where they knew they were going to be probably no worse than fourth or fifth going into the playoff. That's college football. So any of these people that are, they should opt out of can't, they just don't get it, and they probably never will.
I mean, my only I agree with you. But things like this always start as a small collective of people and it spreads like a disease. Um, the more legitimacy people place on it. So,
There's a
college
greater
football has
chance.
wandered itself into the middle of the woods, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
there's a greater chance that conferences get rid of conference championship games than teams opting out of it, but that's never going to happen because in Atlanta, there's 80,000 tickets sold at $200 plus a ticket. The ratings for Alabama, Georgia were enormous. Atlanta treats that game like a Super Bowl. I've been to a million of them, and that whole city is hotels are skyrocketing costs. It feels like it not doesn't feel like a bowl game. It feels like a Super Bowl. There's no way on God's green earth are any of these conferences scrapping conference championships, no matter what it means to. Well, if this team loses, they can get knocked out of the playoff. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so college football is a mess right now, in my opinion. I'm excited for the college football playoff, though.
I am too.
And
College
we're
football is the greatest sport from kickoff to the end of the game. It's everything else about it that's a major problem right now and getting worse. But once the ball is kicked, it's it's still the best.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you can, and we did this too in that other episode I was referencing. Whether that was that this past summer or the summer before? I think it
I
was the
think it was
summer
this.
before.
I think it was the summer before. Yeah,
A lot of this can be traced to the more and more ESPN has gotten involved. So,
I hate that fucking network. I really do.
but bringing us to Just Giants here, 29 minutes into this episode. The Giants are on a bye week, so that's why we spent a lot of time talking about this. Some new interesting news, although we can't spend too much time on it because we don't really know that much. Giants assistant defensive line coach Brian Cox was fired over the weekend. A lot of rumors flying around in regards to why that is. not really going to discuss too much on in the world of rumors, but we were just kind of discussing pre-show. I don't ever remember an interim head coach coming in and making so many moves. Like, it's weird to me. You have a new defensive coordinator that was decided by the interim head coach allegedly. Now you've got another guy who got fired almost silently in fact, very silently over the weekend. This news broke in probably the most interesting way. Gonna credit him. Doug Analytics on Twitter was perusing through the Giants staff webpage over the weekend and noticed that he was gone. And so he said something about it. Pat Leonard looked into it, and he started doing some digging around his sources and found out that he was indeed fired. So it wasn't announced in a typical fashion. He was silently removed from the team website, and only through sleuthing from insane fans was it even discerned. Like, it would have been really interesting how long it would have taken for this news to come out, right? As an assistant defensive line coach, how long until someone would have noticed? Very interesting.
Yeah, first of all, props to Doug Analytics for that. Good job. Besides all these, firings and moves, he also, comes in and basically benches his quote unquote starting quarterback
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you like him or hate him in a situation, whatever it is, Russell Wilson was the starting quarterback, and they went immediately to
Winston.
Jameis. So this all continues as we go into the conspiracy crank section of the program. My theory, and it's gaining more and more steam in my brain, is I am more and more convinced that Mike Kath is coming back next year. I feel like this is a guy that, you know, just bought a house and he is taking all of the furniture and throwing it in the garbage. If you're renting a house for, a few weeks or a few months, you're not making wholesale changes to that house. You're living in that house until your lease is up and you have to leave. This feels like a guy who just closed on a house and is making major alterations immediately. So I would not be shocked if we kick off next year in September, Mike Kafka is still your head coach.
I don't know if I subscribe to that. I get where you're coming from. I think. What do I think?
The world wants to know, Grump.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think. I think what it speaks. I know it's easy to say it speaks to dysfunction, right? And that's I'm not going to dispute that. But
Middle name.
I do think that it speaks to possibly fractures within the organization and factions within the organization, right? There are people with split decisions. Some people possibly, and I'm just shooting out these names as a theory, but there are some guys here that were Dable guys and some guys here that were Shane guys. And I'm not saying that Brian Cox is one or the other, because I think I've made my point clear. I don't think Brian Dable gave a flying fuck about anybody not on the offense. Certainly a track record of just not really seeming to care. I could be wrong, but it does feel like there are people in the building that have split strong opinions on players, on and I think the Russell Wilson thing comes into it a little bit. I think it's very interesting, damning, not good. It's certainly dysfunctional, but I think it speaks to that specifically, that there were guys that were, and I'm not even saying that it's necessarily good or bad, right? Like, I do think that a certain portion of a GM's job is to let a coach be a coach and let the coach make some certain decisions and stand by your coach, right? The GM hires the coach and trusts that coach to make certain decisions. That coach is gone now. So why are you sticking by guys that maybe you didn't have so I'm not even necessarily saying that it's incredibly bad, but to not even be able to finish out the remaining 5 weeks, like, that speaks to dysfunction right there. That they can't even get to the end of the year without having to dump guys or whatever. And like I said, there's rumors flying around about it. I don't want to get too much into rumors because it's all unsubstantiated, and I don't want to roll with something that may not be true. But
I'm the conspiracy theorist around here, so I can.
I mean, conspiracy is, that's your own thing. What I hear that is unsubstantiated, I would choose to keep out.
That's fair.
And that all kind of rolls us into where we are sort of with Joe Schoen. We went through his presser last week, and I kind of just want to talk about who Joe Schoen is as a GM, because I think it's very easy to have strong hyperbolic opinions about everything. The Giants team is bad. Joe Schoen is certainly very responsible for that. I'm not saying 100%, but I am saying a significant portion, no less than 50% responsible for the state of this team and this 2-win roster, this 2-win season. But how bad is it really? And I think that that's important, because if he's fired at the end of the year, new GM coming in, how bad is the state of the team for the guy who's got to take over versus where it was when it started? I can say with I did not envy any GM that had to come in and pick up the pieces that Dave Gettleman left behind. Dave Gettleman left behind a cap disaster, a bad roster, and a bad team. And all of these things take multiple years to fix. That's not in any way
and a fired coach too.
And a fired coach. Yeah, I mean, you have to do everything, right? So that's not to in any way absolve Joe Schoen from anything. I'm just saying the state of the team could be better than it was. We may not be as far back to square one as maybe we think. And I kind of want to go through. We sort of decided that there's about five or six pillars that you can grade a GM on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are assembling a staff, which is a two-parter, right? You have to assemble a front office staff, and you have to assemble a coaching staff. That is a GM's job. Mm-hmm. They have to manage the cap. That's a third thing. And they have to assemble a roster, which is another two-parter, which you do through free agency and you do through the draft. You can maybe shoehorn a sixth thing in there of trades. The NFL is certainly getting more trade heavy than it used to be. I mean, 30 years ago, I think there was maybe 3 trades a season throughout the whole NFL.
It's going from trade non-existent to trade light, I would say. I wouldn't call it trade heavy.
I'm not sure if I want to add a whole sixth thing for that and just kind of wrap it into free agency, because, I mean, a lot of that has to do with fitting them into the cap and, you know, whatever, assets and whatever. But I want to take a look at those five grading criteria as we go through the tenure of Joe Schoen thus far.
Let's do it.
Okay, so 2022, let's go into the assembling a staff, right? So right away, Joe Schoen did a whole bunch to smoke out other front office members, do some firings, upgrade the scouting department, include a bunch of analytics, and computer systems and different ways to judge and evaluate players both in the league and in college, right?
Which was more important than normal because Gettleman was from the old school. So it wasn't like going from your operating system from 15 to 16. You were going from, a flip phone to an iPhone.
Right, exactly. And then he hired Brandon Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles as his assistant GM. Now, I'm going to caveat this a little bit before I get into grading those things. And that's all I have for those things. Number one, we don't know really what these fucking people do. So far be it from me to sit here and give you a very specific grade on these things or get into the specifics of what they're responsible for. It's very much shrouded in ambiguity. I will never know. What I do know is that the Philadelphia Eagles were so angry that Brandon Brown was poached that they literally changed the NFL rules where that can't happen at that stage of the offseason anymore. I'm going to give it a B grade. I'm going to give that a B grade. I'm going to give a B grade for upgrading the front office. Does that mean a whole lot? I'm not so sure. But where do you stand on those things? Did I miss anything?
I think from where you're starting from, I think it was a bigger lift than most teams would have to do because, again, you're not just taking over a team that was terrible. You're taking over a team that was in the 20th century. And if you go back to our old shows back then, I harped on over and over, this team has to become a 21st century team in basically everything that they do. We need to see an offense that was 21st century. We need to see an organization that was 21st century. We need to see a stadium that was 21st century. So kicking and screaming this team into that 21st century is, the way he could do it by, rebuilding the front office and building it in a modern way. So I think that grade is applicable.
Yeah. And again, I'm not going to be real severe in either direction for the grades on this.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the coaching staff, hired Brian Dable. I'm going to give that a B grade.
A B grade?
A B grade. Here are the other head coaches that were hired that year. Okay, ready? Matt Eberflus stinks. Nathaniel Hackett stinks. Mike McDaniel, I don't know, not bad. Brian Dable, Doug Peterson, not even there anymore. Josh McDaniels, terrible. Dennis Allen, terrible. Lovie Smith, come on, and Kevin O'Connell. Probably the one other one where you can really say they could have done better, right? Is Kevin O'Connell. Maybe. And, a couple weeks ago, Vikings fans wanted to kill Kevin O'Connell, which is insane, but at least says something. There was no real obvious they should have done this hire. Why it gets a B grade and not an A grade is because it felt like they didn't really interview anyone. They went right for Brian Dable. It was pre-decided, and they didn't really care. And ultimately, in 2022, Brian Dable won Coach of the Year.
So you're doing this grade on the hire at the time as opposed to the results of the hire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know that you only have the at the time moment to make a decision, so.
Okay. I'm going to give it a lower grade because I think just because who was available at the time should not be your only parameters for finding a coach. I think, look outside the box a little bit.
That's fair. Yeah.
Were there other potential candidates, a hotshot assistant somewhere or someone that's somewhere established and you poach him? I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it occasionally happens. So it was a poor pool of the knowns, but I think if you want to be, an outside the box thinker as a GM and sometimes make drastic moves, I think you try to see if you can get somebody that no one else is expecting.
I mean, I get that. I'm just saying, if I can't with hindsight look back and pick a better guy, then how do I expect somebody in the moment to pick a better guy and think outside the box? So, yeah. But
I also think that we have to look at this also as the results also. And Brian Dable was not a good coach.
Yes, I'm going to agree with that.
So I think you do need to have the results of what you did factor in at some point. I completely get where you're coming from with the at the time thing. We also have to look at what he was. And Brian Dable may be a really good offensive coordinator. He'll probably have a second life in this league.
Agree.
Might even be a head coach again.
Agree.
But that was not a good first turn for him. And it wasn't just because they didn't win. It was a lot of the things that we've talked 100,000 times about that made him a bad
He's just not a good leader. I mean, that's first and foremost, he's a bad leader.
Yeah.
I'm going to rifle through the three coordinators real quickly with grades and why. Mike Kafka, I gave an A grade because it was a completely outside the box hire, and you were able to take somebody and have them learn the offense under Brian Dable. So when you match him with Brian Dable, he was not, a pre-decided Brian Dable guy, but definitely smart enough that he could learn the offense from Brian Dable and grow. I thought that was a smart, good hire. I think that universally that was well regarded, and I think that Mike Kafka probably is a good offensive coordinator. The results will not ever really tell us what he was able to do over the last couple of years, but in terms of a hire, I think he was a good hire.
It was also a handcuff for a lot of that time.
Exactly.
Play calling was yanked from him. He was basically exiled for a while, and look where he is now. He's the head coach of an NFL team.
Yep.
And who also has been a lot of interest outside the organization to become a head coach too. So
correct.
Those things all factor into a nice grade for him.
Wink Martindale, I gave a B grade. I personally like that style. I think he was a well sought after. A lot of teams wanted him. I think that the results showed pretty quickly that he was pretty good, but ultimately was a bad fit for matching with Brian Dable, and that you had too big of an egos in the same room, and ultimately caused a fracture. But wasn't a bad hire, not a bad coach.
Wasn't a bad hire, but also as we're doing this thing now with the coordinators and everything, we're assuming that Brian Dable is the one making these ultimate decisions. This is not the GM call.
So again, I'm going to say this. At the end of the day, the GM does have final say on things and can overrule things. Should a GM work with his head coach? Absolutely. 100%. Should absolutely give his coach some free reign to make decisions and do things and be comfortable and have all his pieces where he needs them to be successful. But at the end of the day, things do stop at your door. At the very top,
Yep,
when you're like that,
right.
it does stop with you. So that's why I am
Fair.
factoring these into Joe Schoen. Thomas McGahee retained as special teams coordinator. I gave a D grade. He was never really great. He didn't really interview for the job, and in fact, behind closed doors footage showed that Brian Dable halfway offered him the job in the middle of the interview, not really giving a shit at all. And ultimately got fired because special teams were bad. In terms of cap management, immediately, this was the biggest job that Joe Schoen really had for the first 2 years that he was here. And he had a lot of things to do. We'll get into 2023, but
And tough decisions to make. Also.
yeah, I was going to say there was tough decisions in there where he has to do something, but immediately you had restructures to Sterling Shepard, Blake Martinez, Graham Gano, and Adoree Jackson. Okay, you released ultimately Blake Martinez, James Bradbury, Smith, Ryan, Rudolph, Dixon, Booker. I think that he did a great job in his first year and ultimately did a very good job the whole time he was here, but we'll get into that. Would you agree?
I agree. I think that's his. I think cap management, initial and where this team is right now, I think that's going to be his legacy, actually. Because if the next GM comes in, if he's not retained, and the next coach and this team ultimately turns it around, they have the foundation to do that, was not having to spend a year or two digging yourself out of a hole. So I'm going to give this one an A.
The 2022 free agency class included big contracts to Mark Lewinsky and Matt Breida, and then a bunch of smaller contracts to guys like John Feliciano, Richie James, Tyrod Taylor, and then you got into some of the more savvy contracts of Isaiah Hodgins, Nick McLeod, Tony Jefferson, Fabian Moreau, Jason Pinnock, and Jamie Gillen. On the flip side, did a pretty good job, in my opinion, of moving on from Kadarius Toney, Lorenzo Carter, Evan Ingram, Will Hernandez, Jabril Peppers, and Nate Solder. I thought that given who am I missing?
Saquon Barkley.
In 2022, he didn't have to do anything.
Oh, sorry. We're a year behind. Never mind.
Yep.
Never mind.
The Mark Lewinsky stands out as the lone terrible contract in there.
That's a good batting average, though.
Especially given the amount of money he had. He really could only give out one big contract. He gave out to Lewinsky because they absolutely needed somebody in the offensive line. Is Mark Lewinsky bad? Yes. Did they move on from him eventually? Yes. Was he serviceable while he was here? Yes. Was he worth the money? Probably not. But ultimately, I think the bigger things were the hits on guys like Fabian Moreau, who was a starter all year, Jason Pinnock, who was pinched off of the Jets practice squad, Nick McLeod and Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James. Those guys were slam dunk free agents.
Yeah, let's put in perspective, too. The goal for every free agent isn't to become a Pro Bowler.
No.
The goal is to fill needs that you need.
Correct.
And a lot of those guys did just that.
So I think ultimately that 2022 free agency was pretty damn good. I can't complain too much about that given the constraints that they had. The draft, and this is where a lot of fans, I think, spend too much time grading a GM because it's one of only 5 facets, but it is an important facet, and this is one that
head coach and draft.
Yeah, this is one that got a lot of criticism, but I do think also that by the time we're talking about this now in December of 2025 versus December of 2024, we had different opinions on some of these guys. So Kayvon Thibodeau at 5, again, pay less attention to where they were drafted because every draft has a different roster of who's available. Kayvon Thibodeau at 5. Is Kayvon Thibodeau a good player? The answer is yes. It's not about that he was picked 5. It's that they got a good player. Evan Neal at 7. Complete and total bust. Can I fault him entirely for that? No, but ultimately he is a bust and he's a failure. Wan'Dale Robinson at 43. This is a good player. Someone that right now is on a contract year, is heading towards 1,000 yards. We're all in a debate as to whether or not he should be re-signed. That's a good pick. Josh Azudu at 67. I get why he was picked. Bad player, possibly. We'll never know what he was at guard because the fucking Giants never played him at guard. They thought he was a tackle. But not going to give him any credit for that. Cordell Flott at 81. I think in December of 2024, we would have all said that was a wasted pick. Now we're looking at him as a guy that we should probably re-sign or will make money somewhere
We
else.
feel like he's the most solid cornerback we have right now.
I would agree. Daniel
Mhm.
Bellinger at 112, another guy who now we're talking about a fourth round pick. Now you're just talking about guys, do they fill a role? Do I think Daniel Bellinger fills that role at fourth round pick? I'm agreeing with that. This is a good pick. Dane Belton at 114, special team core player, been a core backup. I think that's a good player. 146, McFadden was the penciled in starter at linebacker this year. Does he have limitations? Yes. Was he a fifth round pick? Yes. I think that's a good pick. DJ
Are
Davidson.
we really missing him right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
DJ Davidson at 147. This is one where I think is lukewarm. I'm not going to fault the pick, but is there somebody probably better?
But
Probably.
we're getting into reaches though right now.
Right now, I mean, you just want something out of these players. But it is important to make the distinction that these guys are they playing because they deserve it, or are they playing because your roster is bad and you're relying on your draft picks? So I think that's an important distinction. DJ Davidson has stuck around here and has been okay the whole time. Is he good? No. Is he probably valuable depth anywhere in the league? I think so. I'm gonna say this is a lukewarm pick. Marcus McKeithen is terrible. Beavers, was it Darian Beavers? Terrible.
Beavers.
Awful.
Yeah.
Of note, they also got Tamon Fox as an undrafted free agent in this year. Why is that important? It's important because he's still kind of hanging around as a useful depth piece. Winning a guy like that, an undrafted free agent, is still a feather in your cap. I think that this is an okay draft. I don't have a problem with this draft. It's not great to have a 5th and a 7th overall pick and come away with just Kayvon Thibodeau. It is disappointing, but I still think that this is not a horrible draft.
It's not top heavy, but it's not a draft that sets your franchise back a couple of years.
I agree. Well, with the caveat that Neil busting out did cause them to have to make different moves. But again, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and this is not absolving Joe Schoen of anything, but at some point, Evan Neal sucking is a little bit of Evan Neal's fault.
Yeah, and yeah. And also, we didn't shoot our load with just one. That was the first round draft pick we had. That was
Correct.
the number 2
and
pick that bust. I mean,
exactly. We had 2 picks. He was not the first of the 2 picks. They chose
and
Kevin.
Every single one of us on draft night, because you were doing the live show with, I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing a live show with Bobby and Justin that night. And I remember texting you like, wow, we got a stud pass rusher and the best offensive lineman in the SEC. I'm stoked. And I think a lot of people were thinking the exact same thing. So
this is where I think Joe Schoen got his Fs. 2023, no changes to the front offense. Can't really grade him on anything there. So that's not, incomplete. No changes to the coaching staff. Also fine. Well, then they made some assistant coach additions.
They just came off of going to the playoffs.
Correct. Cap management, they finally released Kenny Golladay. So, another good move there. This is where everything kind of fell apart. And I will give him a little bit of credit right at the top. And I think that's where the last of the credit goes. Okay. He did attempt to sign Saquon Barkley mid-2022 before Daniel Jones. And Saquon Barkley could not come to an agreement with him. That is an important distinction because ultimately the huge failures is the huge contract to Daniel Jones, which I think he wanted to reserve the franchise tag for, but couldn't because of Barkley. So the tag went to Barkley, the big contract went to DJ, and then you go through here are some of the guys that they got. Another contract to Darius Slayton is fine. Jamie Gillen, O'Shane Ximines, Paris Campbell, Nacho, Bobby Okereke, Darren Waller, huge whiff. Isaiah Simmons, whiff. Boogie Basham, whiff. And then some of the guys that they let walk. These are important. They also Ashawn Robinson. I'll give that one as a good contract that was given out. But they lost John Feliciano. That's okay. But they had no center backup. There was nobody on the roster to play center. So to lose him for the fucking $2 million or whatever he made to go to San Francisco was a bad move. They let Nick Gates go, which, again, Nick Gates is not this all-world player, but when you let John Feliciano go, you also let another cheap guy walk out the door that could play center. Richie James leaves. I don't really care. Fabian Moreau leaves. Why is that important? Because you had no corner. You have no corner to play opposite of Dory Jackson. And they let Julian Love go for cheap. Could have been retained. Still missing that now to this day. Overall, this free agency, not good. I can sit back and say this was a bad free agency moment, right?
Especially when you're trying to when you think you're a playoff team, you think you can make the next step, and you're getting free agents to win now.
Hmm.
It's really bad.
Exactly. And I think that's wholly the problem of 2023. This draft is terrible. And all of it feeds into that win now, do this right now, we need to do this kind of situation. Again, and some of these are self-inflicted wounds. You let Fabian Moreau walk. And again, Fabian Moreau is not some all-world corner, but you have no corner. So you end up trading to the Jaguars picks to move up one spot to get Deonte Banks, who ultimately is a bust at this point, is rotating with a 7th round pick right now to play opposite Cordell Flott. That's bad. John Michael Schmitz, again, not a terrible pick in the 2nd round. I don't think he lasts to the 3rd round anyway. He's been basically an average center at this point, but they had no center on the roster. They had to pray that he would fall to 57. This is just bad process. Trading up to get Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt is an absolute bust. Jalen Hyatt is taking up a roster spot, and they traded up to get him. That's where this really becomes bad. And then you get Eric Gray, who's been a bad running back with fumble problems, and now we're into the back end of this where none of this stuff really matters. Trey Hawkins, going to a Wink Martindale system where he fits maybe, but is ultimately a very low-graded player. Jordan Riley no longer with the team. Javarius Owens no longer with the team, but here's where they did do well. Undrafted free agents Tommy DeVito and Bryce Ford Wheaton, who is a 4-team special teamer who unfortunately got injured and isn't playing this year. Those are 2 good gets. The rest of this draft class is pretty terrible.
Pretty bad. I want to go, you kind of you glossed over it and went a little fast for me. I want to go back to the Daniel Jones signing, where I defended it at the time, and I still defended it to this moment.
Sure.
That if we remember, let's go back into time where we were at that moment. That, we just come off a playoff win in Minnesota. When healthy, he's looked like one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And that contract where everybody went crazy about the number still put him at like 13th or 14th highest contract in the league for quarterback. So it wasn't like, at the time we did an analysis on the show of where do we see him in the league, and it was roughly in line about where he was getting paid. So, I thought it was, people look at it in 2020 hindsight, it was like a terrible contract. I don't think it was, and I'll still defend it that it wasn't. It's just unfortunate that he had injuries, and as Indianapolis is finding out, it's unfortunate he has injuries now, because when he's healthy, that team was a 1 seed. When you're healthy, he was being talked about early season MVP. The timing of him versus Barkley, I'm always going to prioritize a quarterback over a running back. I am just always going to do that. And if you think you got your franchise quarterback, you lock him up. So the Daniel Jones thing is always going to be kind of like one of the defining, the Daniel Jones with losing Barkley is going to be one of the defining things of the Jones Jane era. I think it's highly overrated and over talked about relative to everything else.
I agree. I also think, and I don't pay for Spot Track, so I can't unlock this, but I'm pretty sure that the initial contract of 4 years was really a 2-year deal with a dead out that eventually, because of cap constraints that were inherited, had to be converted in September into a 3-year out.
I'm looking, I don't pay for it either.
Yeah. So on September 4th, essentially $8 million of his base salary was converted into a signing bonus, which cleared some cap space for them. But I think that it kicked in extra dead money into that 3rd year, which made... Basically, my point is that everybody hems and haws over the wrong numbers here. It's a 4-year deal. It's $40 million AAV. That shit doesn't really matter. The AAV is not super duper important when it comes to cap management. And I think that the initial contract had them with a get out of jail free card after 2 years, which is relatively low risk. And
You said
again, he's not going to sit there and agree to endless 1-year deals and all this other stuff. So like, going into contract negotiations is in fact a negotiation. You can't just go in there and strong arm the guy into, especially coming off a year where he led them to the playoffs. I mean, look what he's done under Shane Steichen's offense in Indianapolis, where perhaps he fits better, or I have no idea what the issue is, and I'm not a Colts fan and I don't pay that much attention, but it's not like he was just going to go in there and sign any deal that was put before him. There's negotiations in play, and to walk away with that where you have an out built into it is important. It's not to be ignored. And again, the timing of everything, like you said, like I don't think that Joe Schoen wanted to sign him to the contract. I think he wanted Daniel Jones on the franchise tag and Saquon Barkley on the contract, and it just didn't work that way. And it does take two to tango, so it just didn't work the way that he wanted. But at the end of the day, 2023 was a year full of very, very, very win now and short-sighted moves that had corresponding other blunders, like letting some guys walk that were cheap that could have been retained for depth, or just a just in case. If John Michael Schmitz get picked before you pick at 57, well, okay, at least I still have Nick Gates, or at least I still have John Feliciano. There's a center on this roster that we can work with. Shit like that was just not, there was no foresight put into this.
right.
Going into 2024, and I'm not going to go into 2025 for the grading of Joe Schoen because not right
It's
now.
incomplete.
It's sort of incomplete. But going into 2024, and I think that this is important, front office moves, this is not a big one, but just something. Nick Latesta was added as an assistant director of pro scouting under Chris Rossetti. So it's something. Do I know what that guy does? No. So I'm not going to grade it, but it was something that was added. Something was added to the front office. Okay. Coaching changes. Mike Kafka was promoted to assistant head coach, essentially as a glorified move to keep him around, so that you didn't have all three
brought back
coordinators
into the
leave.
fold too. Like
No,
he went back to
he was not doing any. It was announced at the beginning of the year that Brian Dable was doing all the play calling for this year, for 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead 2025. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm having a stellar episode.
But ultimately, I'm still going to give that a good grade because it was important to retain something, even though no matter what offensive coordinator you get to bring in, it's still Brian Dable's offense and he's doing his thing. So
Right.
I still am going to grade that as an okay move. I'm fine with that. Carmen Brasillo added as offensive line coach. I think at this point we can look back and say this was a good move. They moved on from Bobby Johnson, who was not doing a great job with the offensive line. And I'm happy with the offensive line's performance at this point.
Would you say pound for pound he was the best coaching hire we had under?
I would. Yes, I would say that is the best coaching hire that they have had all together. And it's tough between him and Kafka because Kafka's role has been blurred so much. But from where I'm able to grade, it's very clear to see the night and day difference with the offensive line. Right?
I mean, we have one stud offensive lineman. We have an inconsistent center. We have, pieces around the rest of the line. Not a whole lot of depth, and it's been holding up pretty well.
You have a very average center, a very average left guard, a below average right guard, and you have two good tackles. One of them is an all-pro. The other one's probably a pro bowler. And they are giving each of the three quarterbacks that have been there plenty of time to play quarterback.
And we could tell because we've had such bad offensive line play the past several years that it's jarring to see even just a normal offensive line. That's improvement.
Also added Charlie Bulin for outside linebackers coach was needed because they fired Drew Wilkins when they let Wink Martindale go. Shane Bowen added as defensive coordinator. I'm going to give that one a bad grade. I didn't like Shane Bowen at the time.
You didn't like it at the beginning.
I didn't. Yeah. No, I had heard from my Titans friends what there was to know about him, and I was like, none of that sounds like something I like. Absolutely.
And also, it was a complete departure of what we did before. So if you're building a roster around your coaching staff, and all of a sudden you're doing a 180,
yeah,
that's kind of like, what's the overall philosophy of this team?
That's the bigger thing. Is it like, do you even have a philosophy? Do you have any defensive identity, or are you just getting coaches?
Yeah.
And I think also that somewhat speaks to what coaches even wanted to work with Brian Dable, which, again, that will always fall at the feet of Joe Schoen, who hired Brian Dable and wanted him to stick around. And then
There's
they
only 30 there's only 32 defensive coordinator jobs in the league, so they are cherished, but you know, you're right. If it's a guy you don't want to, you saw the relationship already, you see the act he does on the sideline. Some are more coveted than others, even though there's only 32.
and they hired Michael Gobriel as special teams coordinator. I'm not a big special teams guy, but we were talking about how, last week when the special teams absolutely shit the bed. All year, the special teams have been pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm okay with that hire. I think that this was an okay coaching addition. Like we said, pound for pound, Carmen Brasil being the best coaching hire. It's hard to give an overall bad grade for the coaching. Cap management, there really wasn't a whole lot here. They released Daniel Jones in November of 2023. That was a mid-season move. Is that true? No, November
It was in
2024.
November to get rid of him.
It was November 2024.
November 23rd, yeah.
And yeah, in free agency, not a lot of huge names joining. Still had some guys returning like Nick McLeod, Isaiah Hodgins, Lawrence Cager, Gunnar Olszewski. Big one is Jermaine Illuminor, Chris Manhertz, John Runyon, Greg Van Roten, Brian Burns. Those are your big ones that you gain. And all of those guys played a significant role on this team. They let Barkley walk. They let McKinney walk. Those are going to be the ones that haunt fans.
Well,
and in the previous year, they let Leonard Williams get traded as well. And there was, some report, not even a report, it came straight from Leonard Williams' mouth in a press conference with the Seattle Seahawks that Joe Schoen came to him and basically was like, I'll give you the option. Do you want to go? Whatever. And fans kind of took ire with that. And I think that I don't really care about that in some regards. Like, the trade was worth what you got. It sucks to not have Leonard Williams around. You did get basically what he was worth in return. But, I mean, if you hear stories that GMs are dicks to players, you hate them for that. If you hear this, and then I think ultimately you just don't like your team, and that's why you hate the move or hate that he was nice about it or whatever. I don't care about that. Do you care about that?
I don't care either.
Yeah.
No.
But ultimately,
The business.
this 2024 free agency is marred more about what walked out the door than what came in. Because what came in was fine. These were all good additions. What walked out the door, I think, is what is scrutinized here.
Right, and it wasn't a walked out. At the end of the day, Barkley chose to leave.
That's true also. Barkley didn't really
So
want
like
to be here.
walking out the door is like, we're shutting down negotiations and we don't want you anymore. We're not that's not what happened.
Yeah, there was a line in the sand for what Joe Schoen wanted to pay a veteran running back based on his philosophy of running backs with high tread on their tires and a significant injury history. And Barkley had a line in the sand for what he was going to accept to stay. And they could not meet, and that was the end of the story.
Let me ask you a question, Grump. Let's say it's a year later, and because we mentioned all these guys we got on the offensive line that year. Let's say they're all already there a year. Do you think the philosophy with keeping Barkley changes? Because we remember one of the things we were like, okay, letting him go is, well, we're not ready for Barkley.
Yeah.
This offensive line isn't ready for Barkley. Daniel Jones was still hurt. Like, we weren't ready for a guy like Barkley on our team, like Philly obviously was. If we had Runyon and Illuminor and everything with him for a year and we saw the potential, do you think we make a bigger effort to keep him?
Was Jackson Dart here? Is
Was
it
Jackson
this?
Dart?
No, I mean in this scenario, are you drafting
year.
Jackson Dart the same time that you're in a free agency cycle with Saquon Barkley? So, like, basically, let's just say that Saquon Barkley's contract didn't expire in 2024. It expired in 2025. So the same year that you are in the draft jockeying for Jackson Dart, that's the same year that you have to make a decision on Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, well, what does one have to do with the other, really?
I think that they have a lot to do with each other because I think that the line moves for Joe Schoen, right? I think it moves closer to the direction of where Saquon Barkley's line for staying is. Yes, I agree with that. But I think
Yeah,
ultimately, yes, where you are as a team is I just can't pony up that much money for a veteran running back with an injury history. And for the record, GMs that let guys go a year before their decline versus the year after their decline are usually applauded.
that's the whole Patriot thing, wasn't it? For years and years and years.
I would even say it was somewhat a Jerry Reese thing. There were a lot of questions about Steve Smith being let go and going to the Eagles, and Kenny Phillips
Hmm.
getting let go. And ultimately, they got let go at just the right time. We didn't see
Yeah,
the decline on the outside as fans, and we all questioned it. And then they went other places and did jack squat. And that
hmm,
was
very
actually
true.
the right move at the time. So, and the risk is always, I don't care if they have another good year in them. I'm not signing them to another 3-year deal for that
That's the thing.
possible
That's
one good year where they're about to fall off. You take that risk knowing that, and usually that stuff's applauded. And right now, I know Saquon Barkley just ripped off whatever fucking run against a team that's been playing without offensive tackles literally
he's
the
not
whole year.
nearly been as good this year as he was
I
last
mean, it's
year.
been a
He isn't.
nonstop story. He's in the locker room admitting to media members saying, I need to do better. I am not playing where I need to play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, he had this crazy 2,000-yard year last year. Yes, he won a Super Bowl. Yes, there's pictures of him jumping backwards over people. You take the risk that happens so that you're not stuck with what you have right now with the Philadelphia Eagles, which, by the way, are still in a better spot than the Giants right now,
Oh, yeah,
roster-wise.
of course, of course.
Um, I don't really have a ton of problem with Barkley leaving. I do have a problem with McKinney leaving, because ultimately you had to replace him anyway, and you've now double
Hmm.
replaced him. You used a high draft pick, which we'll get to Tyler Nubin in a minute. You also had to sign Javon Holland this past year, so you ended up spending money anyway. I think Xavier McKinney was a good draft pick by Dave Gettleman. That was Dave Gettleman, right? Yes.
Yes.
I think that was a good draft pick by Dave Gettleman. I think that was a good player. I thought it was good value. I like Xavier McKinney. I wish that he were still here. Ultimately, I could live with him walking if there was a plan. There wasn't a plan. There was no plan. Um,
That goes back to the organizational strategy, which, you know, maybe that's the seventh pillar, of what a general manager is.
yeah. Going into the draft, Malik Neighbors at 6. This is a good pick. Why is this a good pick? Not just because he's a good player, because you didn't pick a quarterback that didn't fit. They
Mhm.
didn't pick Michael Penix. They didn't pick J.J. McCarthy. That is important. That's very important because they
Yeah.
were trying to move up to get Drake May. They couldn't make it happen. That sucks. But they correctly identified where the line cut off for quarterbacks that were worth it. They tried to make a move for somebody
That's
that
what the
they.
word was, worth it. That's
Mhm.
a very important thing you have to factor into all these type of, decisions that are made. It's not just good or bad, it's worth it or not worth it too.
Mhm. They went ahead and they got Tyler Nubin at 47. He's overall been a bad player. I'm not going to use the B word only 2 years in, especially when we're firing defensive coordinators and head coaches, etc. But we'll see. It's not looking good for Tyler Nubin. Drew
Right.
Phillips, I think, is a decent player. Decent is the word I'll use. The problem being that the warts that show up in his college film are showing up now, and the good stuff from his college film is what's showing up now. So, Theo Johnson, I think, is a good pick at 107 for what you're getting. For what it's a little bit of a raw prospect. We're seeing some of the shine and some of the warts as well. Tyrone Tracy at 166. I know his role has been reduced a little bit this year. Again, for a 5th-round pick, I still think that this is a good pick. And then Darius
I agree.
Muasau stinks.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
would
think that
even
this
put
is an
Tracy a
okay
little
draft.
higher than
This is a pretty good
I think
draft.
Tracy. I value Tracy a little bit higher, I think, than you do.
I just
I,
don't.
I
I'm unclear on what his role is with the team at the moment. I'm surprised at how little he's played this year. And again,
but
the shoulder injury could be factoring in that he suffered at the beginning of the year. It's a running
mm,
back. Shoulder injury is important.
yeah.
Um,
But again, how his role in the team is not necessarily his fault.
True. Very
That's
true.
that's again going back to organizational plan.
Yeah. I think where Joe Schoen I think that overall Joe Schoen has been roughly an average GM. My overall analysis here is that 2023 was a horrible year mainly because of a giant miscalculation of where you are and who you are. And there was a genuine shift in philosophy from fixing an absolute disaster to I have a gem in my hands, which they did not.
Mhm.
The team was still very much a disaster that overplayed itself. And I think that part of the reason that they were so successful in 2022 was moves made around the margins. There was not a lot of cap space, and they had to find every possible solution to help the team win that they could. And that's where you find signings like Jason Pinnock and Fabian Moreau and Nick
Mhm.
McLeod and Isaiah Hodgins and Tony Jefferson and even John Feliciano to some degree. These guys had significant, and Richie James, these were all cheap guys that were found on the fringes that had a very significant impact on the season. And those moves just sort of stopped happening after 2022. They certainly were not present in 2023. And then in 2024, they weren't really, I mean, you have a little bit with the Chris Manhertzes of the world. But again, by 2024, this is where Joe Schoen's cap space was starting to show up. And, you know, you have
Mhm.
the bigger contracts to Jermaine
You
Illuminor
go big
and
game hunting more.
Brian
That's all.
Burns and John Runyon. You know what I mean? Correct. So, you know, yes, you get more significant impact from those guys, but those moves around the fringes still need to happen. And where
They're
I
your glue
think
guys. Yeah.
yeah, I think where Joe Schoen has proven that he is not a good GM and why I don't think he should return is moves around the fringes like that, and also the same mistake twice nonsense. And this is the line that pissed me off the most from the press conference. He should be afforded as a first time GM some level of mistakes. And I don't want to hear the nonsense that Brian Dable wasn't afforded to learn from his mistakes. Coach mistakes, you get to reset every single year. Brian Dable got 4 years to learn from his mistakes and continue to run, you know, sandals in the summer instead of a hard training camp, hard knocks with Brian Dable. That was his decision every single year. GMs make
Mhm.
mistakes, they have to deal with that for 2-3 years. Okay? Joe Schoen didn't learn from his mistakes either. He continues to make the same fucking mistakes with kickers and wide receiver depth and just ignoring positions, and these fringe moves around the edges are still not being made. The dick way he handled
And
Nick McLeod, the dick way he handled Darius Slayton, where Darius Slayton earned these incentives in his contract and then was asked to restructure his contract and
put
have
out
those
plot
essentially
things
removed.
like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. These are the things where I think I don't know. Let's just say that Joe Schoen inherits a great roster, and you know, let's just say he's the assistant GM. The GM dies, okay, and now Joe Schoen's your GM of a good team. I think that he would GM his team downward instead of upward because of bullshit like this. So that's why I think Joe Schoen should not be retained. Not because he's the worst GM that this team has ever had. I really don't think that. I
I don't
think
think that
that
either.
they go into 2026. The Giants are 18th in total cap space next year. That is a work of art done by him. He did a great job with that. You go into 2027
And
and they're 15th in cap space. He's
let's
done
be
a good
fair.
job of clearing stuff. He's done some good here over the 5 criteria, and he hasn't had total bad drafts across the board. But ultimately, where GMs need to be good consistently, he has not shown that he's consistently good. In fact, he's shown consistently that he makes the same fucking mistakes.
And let's also be fair too. I mean, if you're just looking at record, of how many games has he been at the helm, him and Dable too? Of all of those games, how many games were started by either a second string, third string, fourth string quarterback, or a rookie?
Yeah.
A vast, vast majority of them. So if you're just looking at win-loss record and like, oh, we're still 2-10, or 5 years in a row of being 3-8 or whatever the numbers were or something, you know, quarterback means that much to your win and loss record. And we've been behind the eight ball a lot. So that's why I think this exercise was so valuable to be like, let's look under the hood of what's going on as opposed to just, you know, well, we're 2-10.
So, with that being said, the Giants' bye week is officially complete as of the end of the Monday night game, which is over, right?
It is. It
Is it
is third and four. It's third and
okay?
four. It's fourth down. They have to
Oh,
go
I didn't
for it
realize it went
earlier.
to overtime. Okay,
Yeah, it went to overtime. Chargers kicked the field goal. It is 4th and 4 from the let's see, about 42-yard line. So it'll be a 58-yard field goal. Elliott's already missed a field goal tonight. So
that
he
being
might as well
said,
just stay on until he kicks the kick.
yeah, when we will, but I will add the 2025 report card at the end of this year when Joe Schoen is really being considered. I'm going to try and get it done before Black Monday, I guess, right?
I'm gonna do some play-by-play for you, Grump.
Okay, we're ready.
Timeout. Timeout. Go back. Go back.
But yeah, so before not Black Friday, Black Monday, when everybody gets fired, we'll try and add the 2025 report card to Joe Schoen's overall tenure. It's not going to change my opinion, I don't think. No, in fact, I know it won't. But it's still worth doing because there's a chance that Joe Schoen remains, right? So if Joe Schoen remains into the next season, 2026, these are more data points for him.
You know what Conspiracy Crank thinks? I think they're all coming back. So yeah.
I will not be shocked if Joe Schoen returns.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing on a timeout?
Elliott is they're going for it on 4th and 4.
Wow, that's a long tush push.
I've seen some big asses in my day, but it's about a yard in where they put like the field goal line, and it looks like they just jumped.
Who?
I think
it's over.
Chargers jumped off
okay.
sides, which would be
Jesus
for a first down. They did. Son of a bitch.
So
off sides, first down.
With that being said, you and I and Bobby, we are going to the game this Sunday against the Washington Commanders, the 3-win Washington Commanders.
Oof.
Where we will see
maybe some snow, Grump.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Potentially.
I love a snow game. New Jersey snow is not really like that Buffalo snow, usually.
That looked cool. Awesome. And then we're all winners after the game. We're going to Kennewick Diner.
That is correct. So, you have any thoughts on the Commanders game? I don't know. At this point,
it's just a collection of 22 guys on the field at the same time. When quarterbacks aren't playing and both teams are miserable and out of it. I don't know. Beat them. It's Washington, for Christ's sakes.
Let's hear the Cranky prediction though. What's the score? How does that game end?
Something, we're gonna win this one, I think.
Okay.
We're gonna win this one 24-10.
That's a pretty commanding win. Yeah. Well, not to use the lame adjective. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Jackson Dart playing. I think there can be some points made. Both teams are done. Yeah. Nothing is surprising me in this league anymore. And this feels like one of those games where, if this game was in Washington, I'd probably have a 24-10 Washington. But the game is home. It feels like forever since there's been a home game.
Yeah, that is true. Is Jaden Daniels hurt again?
I believe he is.
Yeah, I know he played first game.
He's hurting
back from that gruesome arm injury.
Ugh. Jaden Daniels.
I think the Eagles just lost.
Is that a pick?
A pick or a fumble.
All right, that makes me all feel a little better. He could return in week 14 against the Vikings, so he'll be out. So that solidifies my prediction.
Yeah. Wow, this is some compelling. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll through my phone to see.
This might require some editing.
So Eagles just lost live. That was our live reaction of haha and whatever. I don't even know exactly what happened. Was it a pick or was it a fumble? Do you see?
I flipped over for 1 second. I believe, let's see, it was.
I see someone running around. Oh my God, he's wide open too. That's a pick. Deflection pick.
Oh, wow. And he's lucky he wasn't out of bounds either. The second guy off the pick. Let's see.
Yeah,
Jefferson was.
He's 100% inbounds. Not even close.
He is. He's fine. The other angle looked like that left foot might have been out, but he's good.
Yeah.
Ooh, tough division, that NFC East right now.
Dallas got fucking stomped by Detroit. I had that game totally wrong. I'm going to go with the Giants win also. I think that this is part of the fans are going to melt down. The Giants currently have the number 1 overall pick, and they're going to see it slowly slip down away from them because I think they're going to win a couple of games. I don't think this is going to be the only win.
Yeah, but you know something though, Grump, people they're not going to melt down as much if we were in the quarterback hunt, or if there was
Yeah.
there's an Andrew Luck out there, like we got to get this guy, and we Giant fans feel pretty good about Jackson Dart, so it's not losing the number 1 pick or dropping down. It doesn't have the same psychological effect
I
as
guarantee you
missing out.
it doesn't matter because ultimately the fans are going to be more mad about the fact that Joe Schoen is going to stay, which I still think is going to happen. So.
I think so too. I think they're starting the plan for 2026 right now. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, and for the record, I know that there was the initial report was Joe Schoen is safe, and then like a couple days later there was a report it's like he's not as safe as you might think. They're going to evaluate at the end of the year. I think that was more damage control than anything. That second
If I had
report.
$1 for every report I've heard in the last month, college and pro, I'd be a very rich man right now. Any thoughts at all to maybe John Harbaugh? They lost again yesterday.
They got robbed yesterday.
No, they lost. The
Yeah.
bottom line is they lost.
And that was Harbaugh versus Tomlin. Both guys may be on the chopping block. And I would be happy with either one. I would rather Harbaugh. I would rather Harbaugh.
Me too. Harbaugh is my number 1. If I have my dream coach for next year would be Harbaugh. My dream realistic coach.
Do you think there's any smoke to the Gruden stuff?
God, yeah, smoke from people's fucking hookah pipes or wherever they're smoking. I don't understand. I just don't understand the, linking him to college jobs or pro jobs just because he says he would like to coach again.
No, I think it's specifically linking him to Jackson Dart and how much he liked him.
I mean, come on. I mean, I thought there was a better chance that we would get Lane Kiffin than we would John Gruden. I don't think John Gruden still has a lawsuit with the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things here. Number one,
he's not coming back.
Listen, I do like John Gruden as a guy, and like I think that he's a very smart football mind. I'm not saying I don't like John Gruden. I would be shocked if John Gruden, who currently has an active lawsuit against the NFL, number one. Number two, his last stint in the NFL, and like that lawsuit centers around a lot of things that the Maras don't really want PR wise. A lot of like homophobic and like
for sure.
And then number three, are we forgetting that his tenure with the Raiders was actually just fucking terrible?
Yeah.
It was awful. And then like before that, I think he's like actually career 500. So it's not like he had a terrible stint with the Raiders on top of, a 5 Super Bowl, lifespan.
He was handed the keys to a team with the Bucs that should have won a Super Bowl before with Tony Dungy. And that team slowly went downhill along the time he was there with them.
Yeah.
And also, other than Dick Vermeil, can you name a coach that was out of the league for a long time and came back and was successful?
Out of the league or out of coaching entirely? Pete Carroll was gone for quite a while.
How many years was he out?
I don't know. How long was he at USC? I feel like you would know that more than me.
But he was still coaching.
That's what I'm saying. Out of the league or out of coaching?
Out of coaching.
No.
I can't. And even Joe Gibbs, I remember when he came back, because he had retired. He was doing vet racing shit for a while. I don't remember them being. I think they might have maybe won a division once, maybe. But certainly, he's not remembered for, he came back and was really successful.
And even so, what are we talking about? One example?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We're on an hour and a half. This was
fun.
Definitely one for the fans. If you love football, this was the one for you, because there was no game and we went on and on and on. But this was an important one. I think for the integrity of college football, that first half hour was worth it. And for the New York Football Giants and how things are going this past year and into the future, the remaining hour after that was worth it as well.
Let's put it this way. If you're still listening, the first person who mentions silver dollar pancakes at Candlewood Diner, I will buy you silver dollar pancakes.
I noticed you said pancakes, not flapjacks this time. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I didn't put Skinamax on yet, so I
There you
wasn't
go.
over at Flapjack. So I just kind of feel like having some silver dollar pancakes.
Yeah, you're all about that. But I am excited for Candlewick Diner. It's one of those places. It's got a giant menu, the classic New Jersey diner menu. That's a
Offensive
million.
coordinator,
Here's the
cute,
thing:
yeah.
don't get overwhelmed by it. It doesn't matter what you pick. Everything I've ever had there is delicious, and I've had about 9 different, completely different items.
Same.
And all the times I've been there, everything is delicious. If you're stuck between 3 things, flip a bunch of coins. I don't know.
I
Figure
think
it
they
out.
even have champagne if we win too.
I'm
So
pretty sure they do have alcohol. Yeah.
I mean, that champagne bottle has probably been you know, unopened for how many years we haven't won a game, but I think they have it.
Well, I'll see how much it is, and if this team ever wins a division, maybe I'll buy
Bobby can pay for it. He's a rich guy.
it. All right, everyone. I hope to see you guys at the Commanders game. If you are going to that game and you want to hang out at Candlewick Diner, it's going to be significantly after the game, I think. I think Bobby and I are doing an episode directly after the game. So it would probably be a full hour after the game is over. But if it's your Sunday, if you have it free, that's the place to hang out. We hope to see everybody there.
Or anybody.
Yeah, say hi. It's the last time I will be at a game this year. So
It might be the last time I'm there this year too. What do we have? 2 home games after this?
one of them is our Christmas party, so we can't go. The Vikings
Right.
game. So
The Cowboy game, which
yeah.
I already sold my tickets.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Sold his tickets.
Ladies and gentlemen, your New York Football Giants.
Yeah. So yeah, would love to see everybody. Say hello. Shake your hand. Meet you. Tell me all about yourself. Until next, if I can't see you, then I will see you on the next episode. Come stop by the comment section. Listen on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and of course YouTube. I'm also on the Giants Nation Show with Bobby Skinner on all the same things: iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants. And go Lightning.